We're talking with Victor Bugge. How do you say your name?
Well, it's kind of hard to pronounce in English, so Victor.
Every Danish person's like, well, you're probably too stupid to say it, but it's really Bugge, you know.
Yeah, okay, you can just call me Victor, you know.
Victor. All right, well, Good morning and welcome. We're talking today about like Tartaria and stuff, and like I wanted to bring in this guy because he's been talking on the internet. He has a forum that he's moderating that's a lot of the pictures that people are exchanging back and forth, and he's from Denmark. And so why don't you actually like introduce a bit about your, here, go on.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm Victor. I'm from Denmark. Just finished my philosophy studies. Just finished my bachelor's. I'm free now. That's cool. And yeah, I've been researching Tartaria for quite a while now, and the mud floods, and I'm basically also a flat earther, if you can say that, without being condemned too much.
Yeah, in a flat space, I've been saying, just
flat space is such a good way to unify the two camps. It's you need to watch that if you haven't watched that, by the way. Flat space, amazing. So yeah, coming into it. So Tartaria, I've been looking a lot into that. I've been, digging on the archives like a maniac in my free time. Also because it's fun. It's like this psychedelic ride into history, because all you thought were true about history turns out to be like, just shows you an entire different world, like this magical fairy tale world.
Fake news.
Yeah, but we all know that. We all know about the Middle Ages being this magical world, but I don't think we have, tried to comprehend how much they mean what they say and what they show, and we haven't really thought about it. We just like discounted it on the face of it. So it's kind of weird to go down the line and actually try to accept the premise of this being true, and researching it as if it were true. But I've been pushed over that line, basically, by the evidence and by the connections that certain people have made on YouTube, like Martin Littke and Philip Dushinen, amazing guys. They made a lot of sense out of this.
Yeah, really amazing work that no one's like really comprehended yet in the mainstream. That's like totally it's pioneering research, really outsider investigations. It's amazing.
Extreme. And it's like it has this unification value. It brings all the camps together, perhaps except the Globetrotters, if you can say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I also call them the oppositional.
Anything. I love the Globies.
I just call them, there's hypnotic reactionaries. You know what I mean? Hypnotic reactionaries to anything. It can be on any side of any issue, really, I think.
Yeah.
I think, at some point we're going to like talk more about the holographic universe and why these metrics can be, measured for people that want to believe that, and how that works if you're going to measure everything inside out, that it can actually make sense. Like, but not that it's actually true, just that it can be made into a rational equation. And like that's a lot of time what you're just like, yeah, tell me more about how they stitched it together, because that's all that they can never do. But having said that, like, it's cool. You also said that you were studying things. You studied some philosophy and some history, you said. And what was the law stuff?
Yeah, I've been looking into the law for 2 years as well. And I've been on the side with this Danish guy who's basically the only guy I know in Denmark that has it all worked out, and is ready to stand in the court and do whatever, basically. It's a complicated story if you haven't looked into the esoteric aspects of law. And I also mean, what I mean by esoteric is that not that it's hard to comprehend, but that it's not recognized, even though it's stares you in the face. So that's what I mean by esoteric. It's also Mandy Hall's definition of the term, like something that is blindly obvious to some because it stares you in the face all the time, but no one recognizes it, and that's the the separation of the sheep and the goats, basically.
Well, again, Cake says sheep go to heaven and goats go to hell.
Well, maybe there's deeper meaning to that if you can, turn the terms heaven and hell on their heads. And basically that's what you do with philosophy. You turn things on their heads and, you try to see if you can make another meaning out of it. That's what I do with philosophy. And so then,
with your metaphor, are you saying like, because like the way I've always looked at it is like goats are like sheep, but they don't only eat good things. They also eat good things, but they also eat the bad things. And that's their main difference. And
well, the main difference between goats and sheep, if you have tried to herd sheep or goats, you will find out that goats are extremely difficult to herd, because they are intelligent beyond belief. They will find out patterns in the way you try to, like call them, and they will only accept the calling if if they know they've been treated well. So basically, the goats demand respect, whereas the sheep don't. And that's basically the two jurisdictions in law. In the jurisdictions of men and women, also called common law, we demand respect, and we demand to be recognized, and we know our rights, and we know the capacity within the meaning of those rights. Whereas the other jurisdiction does not care about such things. They only care about orders and following them and trusting blindly. But we can get into that.
So one thing I was going to ask you about, you were saying earlier, okay, so we're talking about like the difference between modern law and its connections to Saxon law. So what are some of the things that you would say, like you would say like connect modern law, like British and American law, specifically international European law, because it's global, with Saxon or with Scandinavian law?
Basically. No, okay, yeah. What connects Denmark with it? Well, it's basically old treaties. I haven't actually what we've done in the Law Society. I haven't actually looked into the status of Denmark, but I know that all nations basically went bankrupt in 1933. So did Denmark, and it was declared under international bankruptcy law, and so it lost its solvency in international matters, and so it also lost its sovereignty in international matters. And I know how to look up the registration of the Danish corporation. It's registered in Copenhagen under Havnegade 5, which is near Amalienborg. And quite surprisingly, also, there is another corporation registered to the same address, and that is the basically the Danish Securities and Exchange Commission. It's called something Danish, so it doesn't matter if I say it; you won't understand it. Yeah. But what connects us with this international system is the birth certificate, and also that Denmark was declared bankrupt, and basically it is a subdivision in the only corporation on the plane, which is the Crown Corporation in the UK, and the creditors to that corporation is a touchy subject. I cannot prove that, but I know people who can.
That's actually interesting that you bring that up. I was gonna mention something because you said that, like the Peabody Institute, right? So anybody in America who's heard of George Peabody, and if you haven't, you should, because like there's Professor Peabody. Let's look that up. Professor Peabody is a dog who adopts a child, and then he raises the boy to be a good boy. He's like, "Come here, Sherman. Good boy. Sit down."
I think I know this one.
Yeah, well, he changes history a lot, but probably because it's true. The Fractured Fairy Tale era, which was made by Walt Disney, but it was made by Buena Vista because Walt Disney actually he let his children. He started a company in his children's name so that like they would be millionaires by the time they got out of high school. Anyway, George Peabody, who was born in I think Ohio, ended up going to JP Morgan in Britain. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure I was correct on this. So JP Morgan and George Peabody worked together under the Rockefeller and Wahlberg Trust, and with a 20% stake in a Rothschild company, went to Britain. And once he was in England, the Bank of England basically fell apart, and he ended up in charge of it. And so what's crazy is that there's a statue of this American guy in front of the Westminster Abbey, and they had his funeral in Britain. So it's kind of interesting, this American guy, but like connecting that to the international Warburg family, that connects it to the Rothschilds, which then connects it to the European sacking of the European estates. Yeah. Also, you were saying something earlier I was going to ask about, which was like, do you know much about Saxon trusts?
Well, I know about trust law, if that's what you're asking. I know about the settlor and the trustee and the beneficiary and the trust triangle, and how to, use that based practically in a court,
because this is historically a Saxon thing, maybe if you could explain a little bit about trust law, so how does trust law work? What are its benefits?
Well, the benefit of trust law historically was that you could put your property into a trust, which was basically an oral agreement between two men in Roman days, because only men had rights. And so it was a benefit for the crusader, basically going into war, that he did not know if he was going to return. And if he did, then he would have his property looked after by a trusted friend. And basically the word trust comes from faith and credit, and they mean basically the same thing. It's a mental projection into something, into some form, basically.
So that's trust. Fascinating. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me?
Oh, sorry. I was saying that's really fascinating, because let me go back to it. The thing about trust is that the whole world, if you just saw recently, there was a Panama Paper documentary made by Alex Winters. And Alex Winters is the guy who was in Bill and Ted. And basically, he's actually done a couple of really interesting documentaries about like Napster and Facebook, and he's like interested in digital media right law. But what's fascinating about the Panama Papers, the Panama Papers, it has the scope of a $277 billion tax avoidance by mostly political figures, including political leaders in different countries, in the West and in the East. So what's interesting is that it all relies on the system of trust, which comes from the Saxon law system, and they use it all across the Caribbean. And the King of England, who went to Bermuda, what's his name again? Sorry if it was, I get that used. That's a whole other thing that we should look into. But the guy, Queen England, her father, right? Or is that right? Her heir apparent? No, wait. Basically, one of the guys went to Bermuda. I failed to remember the name, but her father, or George the Sixth, or I can't.
Yeah, I think it was.
Well, I'll get back to that. But the point is that someone just decided to abdicate the throne so they could live in a trust holding in Bermuda, and it was all based on the Saxon law, because the Saxon Crusaders would hold land in the names of other people, and the Knights Templar were basically the beginners of this sort of banking system of holding land for other people. And there was only really 13 families that were allowed to do it originally, that are connected with the Merovingian. But they didn't have to pay taxes on the trusts. So they would just get to take the fruit of the land while the things were settling there. But by law, that's why they get like 10 times every dollar that they can trade from every dollar that they own. And it seems like everything comes to trust.
yes, it does, because it's primarily not, something to do with any man-made system or construct. It's from the Bible, basically. It's what we could term natural law. So basically, it just reverts back to that. Jus natural, or natural law, and not natural laws as in the laws of the universe, but basically they are interconnected, and so they are an extension of that. But it is not what I mean. Physical laws. They are moral laws that govern our conduct, basically.
Interesting. So these moral laws, like how are they enforced, for instance?
They are enforced by men and women, basically, and there's only one way to enforce them, and that is to do it correctly. And that sounds, stupid to say, but it's basically what it is. It is to do it correctly according to common sense, and that common sense tradition you can find in the commentaries on the laws of England from Sir William Blackstone, for instance, or in the writings of Coke. Lord Coke.
Well, I mean, everyone used to be a lot more polite in Japan in the Old West when they had, pistols and swords, I gotta admit.
But yeah, as we come to realize, maybe that was Tartaria times,
Yeah,
and
right.
And that's the whole thing that turns this law thing, maybe it's even more, crazy than we ever imagined, because this whole law thing kind of hinges up on history, or common history, as in, London burned in 1666 and the Sesti Act was enacted, and so on and so on. Documents can be forged, so maybe we need to really critically, investigate if the claims are as they say, just as, the Vatican says it made all those shitty trusts, claiming all our souls and bodies, and it's basically the free people crowns they wear on their heads.
Yeah, but it's like if we didn't know that the Vatican thought that they saved our souls when they came to the New World, then we wouldn't know about Tartaria at all. And so it's kind of the thing about lies, is it's like we find out so much about the background of the thing from what they're lying about.
About that logically. If you lie about something, there has to be, a P to lie about.
Yeah, it's the rings around Saturn, totally. There's a lot. I was gonna look up some things about the asset bubble of Japan, because there was something that happened, which was in like the 80s. Japan purchased a bunch of these islands and turned them in a bunch of property all over the place, really. And a lot of these big old buildings and former colonies and things like that, and then things just collapsed. And when they collapsed, they lost a lot of the stuff, and things just got left unfinished everywhere. But what's crazy, is now a lot of these big billionaires or 100 billionaires are buying these island areas, and they're turning them into their own little self-sustaining, like country style colony, villas. And it's pretty nuts. Like, like almost all of them, like Google's and Zuckerberg from Facebook, and like Oracle's, Ellison, like they've all got these little islands. And one of them that was kind of weird was Disney, because Disney has, they have a cruise line that goes around the world, and they have properties all over the world. Like they actually have like Disney Vacation, I think, goes to like Paris, and
they have this ship called the Magic, I think, right? It's just called Magic.
Yeah, I believe it. I do. And but they go to you can go all over the world. And the thing that was weird about the Lonnie thing was like they didn't even charge people properly, and they had to fire a bunch of people because they just like, if you had gotten in at the right time, like you'd have to pay as much as it even cost them to do the thing. But they just really desperately wanted to buy the dang property and didn't have the money all in a lump sum that way. So you got people to just do timeshares and things like that. But it's like there's something about this island that's pretty nuts too, because like if you look into and they're building another one for Millennial Vacation. It's on the Oahu Island, which is the top, not quite the top island.
No.
But it's pretty pretty beautiful, and it has, of course, this volcano land, and there's some here. So here's the reason why you might want to buy some land in Oahu. If you're looking for Atlantis. So I have some friends actually that do treasure hunting, and they go out there.
You do.
Yeah,
That's
I'll get into that in a second, but I just really want to quickly mention this. I saw this because people were talking about like shills versus like people that are like self-radicalized MK Ultra, and well, so that stuff's real, and so it'd be important to talk about. And so I've been looking into it a bit, and so the CIA illegal MK Ultra mind control experiments, which I think you all know about, and if you don't, like, we can talk about that stuff more in the future. It's very important. It's very real. And of course, it did exist, but now it still does, is the proof. Say they not only have been trying to hide it for decades, but it looks like it should probably, according to this information, still be going to this day. And, you know, that's kind of obvious to anybody who's listening, I hope. But it's the point is that it's mass hypnosis, televised hypnosis, and it gets to the point where everyone has the same stimuli, so they have the same responses to the stimuli, like laugh tracks, and people eventually, you know, it's just embedded into our culture, really. So it's a good concept, and I kind of agree with it, and I think everyone should be aware of this.
Isn't it also called the concept of priming?
Yeah, priming. I don't know if this is, I'm afraid to look this up. Moderate safe search. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, priming your brain. That's you gotta be careful. But yeah, it's a very real thing. It's kind of like the anti-gaslighting. It's a thing that's you know, it's setting you up so that you're ready to respond a certain way. So sort of like when you teach kids, you put them in college first, you know, and make them think critically instead. But instead what they do is they put them in a room with a bunch of decided things, like this is the map and this is the globe and this is the whatever, and like therefore by the time you get to the point where you're learning about, you know, like the holographic universe, like you don't even understand that it's like, you know, all of physics and everything like that. Like by the time they let you know that it's all flat, like you've been taught a model, so you're not really able to like see that it was just one of the many models. It could have been that model or that model, depending on what you wanted to like know about reality. So
yeah, and everybody is afraid of being ostracized, right? Everybody is afraid of the, you know, they have this social.
Not anymore. You know, that's the thing that's kind of interesting about Satanism. They've made the whole world, you know, Satanist, and so people no longer think that way that they used to think. I mean, and I don't mean that necessarily against.
You gotta thank them, you know. You gotta thank them.
Yeah, maybe in one way. And if there's one thing besides cleaning the beaches that I'm going to give them credit for, because at first it was like, oh man, you know, because I know some people that are like, they're vegetarians and they're all good people, but they consider themselves Satanists. And I'm like, yeah, cool. You let, you know, yeah, you're in charge. Cool. Like, yeah, like just do what you want. Just do what you want. Yeah. Like, do you want to get hit with a stick, or do you want to eat the carrot? Yeah. Like control by choice really, really works well. But people who believe that, you know, they have any amount of self-control in a system where they're being led, you know, down a maze, it's not too real. So you need to like understand, like, you more of the control you have is over making the best choice. And the best choice is probably,
and that is limited control. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, unfortunately it's true. I mean, it's limited, but it's still control. I mean, it's kind of a thing called balance, and I mean, you know, but like you're still trying to do your best with the information you have given, but you're trying to follow flow, and flow is the most important thing. But it's like Satanism, you know, at first you've got like they used to make it so that everyone who looked like was a heretic, and now, you know, you can't even look. It used to be that somebody who wanted to seem like, don't listen to me, like would have to dress like a witch, like Anton LaVey, dress like a Satanist to freak people out. But now that would be socially acceptable. So what you can do is you have to be a weirdo. That's the only thing left, is to kind of be a weirdo. But they're taking that away from us too. That's completely socially acceptable. So I don't know what's left really. Like I think we're gonna have to start wearing suits again.
Maybe we have to create these new types of, you know, subcultures. You know, maybe there is this new Tartarian way to be. You know?
Yeah, I think we should get cravats. We should go 17th century. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good look.
Bring out the now, guys. And we tried, you know, rebranded, you know, all pure and stuff. Oh yeah, good luck with that.
I believe. I think it could work.
It could work. Maybe we're gonna give them a little time, you know. But yeah, about the swastika thing. Basically, I found that it's everywhere around us. Walking in the cities, there are these patterns, on near the roofs, and you will see swastika patterns in them if you look, and you can find it everywhere around Europe still, if you know where to look.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I don't want to look that up. That's probably too scary. But like there are pictures of historically like swastikas in the Old West, or I like to call them spinning propellers. Here we go. Historic pictures are better.
Yeah, spinning propeller. Yeah, I heard you had a little opposition to that.
I just think it's a good word because it represents the function of the object. And so what the point is that when they make the pictures, that's what they're explaining about the picture. And you call it the Vedic word because it's the right word, and I'm not against it. Like, to be perfectly honest, I'm not taking that away from anybody. I'm just making the point that what it is in today's culture has changed. Like if you want to look up like what I called it in school, I wrote like papers on the thing. It was called the Gamadian, and Gamadian nano. I type in nano next to it now, but here you go. Here's a stem, and this is how you do it. All right, like this is literally the point of life, is to make little propellers.
Nanotech. That's true.
And so once it starts going, like you produce way more energy than you would with a normal photovoltaic cell, because it actually has propulsion. So it has both constant potential, and it has stored potential.
Yeah.
And so
it kind of, Victor Schauberger has this whole thing about the fluid dynamics and torsion energy, and basically the vortex motion is fundamental in nature and can be harnessed in many ways. And it was funny. I found this crazy book while I was digging once. It's called Mathematical Magic, and I passed it to Martin, and he was also gobsmacked by it, because basically from chapter to chapter it goes over how the ancients used perpetual motion to accomplish any sort of obstacle in their society. It's amazing, how they speak of such conviction in that book about all sorts of mechanical ways to achieve perpetual motion.
Is that book easy to find, or
them being goofballs, because they are writing for the Royal Society and to kings and queens, basically initiating them into a hidden past, and it's in the 1600s, and it's written in plain English. It's amazing. You should go check that out.
Send us a link to that book. That sounds very important. I don't know if you've read or if you've seen.
I can put a link. You can post it later if you want.
That sounds excellent. I don't know if you've seen Mathemagic, the Donald Duck in Mathemagic Land, but I will do.
Yeah, I've seen it. It was what early stages of my awakening. I showed this to some of my friends, and it was like the only thing that could ever get them to say something. And this is like back in 2011 or something. Like, this was the only thing that could get them to say something.
I had a friend that sat on the other side of the laptop. They refused to watch this when they were like teenagers, because they didn't want to know this stuff was real, because their parents were like political and stuff. But I mean, it's pretty much probably the most important awakening cartoon, and it is a Disney cartoon, so it's another interesting example about how Disney
this dual nature to these evil men is you have to figure out what's behind that. And not that I say that you shouldn't oppose evil or whatever conception you have of evil. Of course you should, but there is probably a deeper layer to all this nasty pedophiliac shit.
Right.
And maybe on the highest level, if you read Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, he alludes to saying something around the lines that he by the doctrine of Lucifer, they take on this persona that is evil, and you have to do evil, and it basically also goes hand in hand with Crowley's philosophy of of the extremes, where you go out in an extreme left and then you come to the extreme right, like some sort of, you know, time vortex or something. I don't know how he explains that. I haven't looked quite much into it, but I know that he thinks around those lines. So basically, that you go to heaven by sinning extremely. The worst of sins are the best, because they lead you into, you know, like this. It's all about mirrors for these people. So they don't do what they want to do. That Pike, he you know, he puts it into something like, he says, "What I hate, I do." Basically,
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
What I hate, I do.
And why would you do that? That's the question. Why would you do that?
Yeah, that's something I'll never. Gosh, the stupid screen share thing. I can never figure out. I can never figure out why anyone would do that. Like, it doesn't make any sense that you would want to choose to do the opposite of what you know is right. Because this gets down to like what's kind of funny about the whole. There's like a few rules that are really like, you know, because like even the Christians who believe that you can get forgiven for like horrible things, there's a couple things you can't get forgiven for, right? Like murder. Yeah. And more importantly, apparently the murder, I mean, or at least as importantly, but like it comes first, I think, is blasphemy. And so, and that's kind of funny because it's blasphemy is God is what? God is sort of the truth, I would just say, or the truth is part of God. I don't know. Maybe I'm being kind of legislative with this, but the way I would look at it is hiding the truth is sort of it's a sort of blasphemy of God. And so it could be considered, you know, and you don't want to mess around when you're not the judge with something like that. So you're better off just to not commit what could be construed as blasphemy. You know, it's like that's just a nuts thing to do. I think that's probably why the tradition fell apart in the 20th century, because so many people felt that way, honestly. And I think it's a weird thing.
Yeah, and it came out of this insane literal conception of the book, basically, and no historic you know, connection to the writers. That's also a huge problem. And there are so many problems, but reading the new chronology by Flamingo, I kind of, you know, got to try to reestablish the Bible on the historic timeline, and also I got my perception shifted a lot, you know, because I was at the same time I was reading into my genealogy. I have this family crest, and basically the family founder is from the 14th century, so 1345, around those times. And in 1347, he left to the Holy Land with the Danish king, and reportedly got crowned, or not crowned, knighted, sorry, on the grave of Christ. That is reported in history in our family book.
Do you know what the Old English or Danish root or a Scandinavian root for knighting, or the word for knight? What is it? What the etymology is in Danish?
Well, there is the knecht. That's the closest word to knight. It's basically the word for the you know, the knight in a deck of cards. You know, the jack, right? Yeah. So knecht, yeah, that's the Danish word for it. But we also have another word for knight. It's called ridder, and that's basically the action of riding on a horse. Yeah. But all those words have profound layers of meaning if you go into the esoteric stuff of if you view them as symbols instead of just meaning.
What kind of things? Like what kind of meanings do you know?
Well, you have when you get this illusion when you look into the deeper senses of law and common law and admiralty law, and how everything you say in an admiralty court, you have to be very careful of how what you say and how it is defined, because the rules basically say that you cannot state a claim, and whatever you pretend to say, the judge can, you know, just put whatever definition to the words that you're saying. So basically, if you want to win by their rules, you have to write everything down on a piece of paper and call it an affidavit of truth, and state in the first lines that this is the truth, and then you state your status, and then you state all the facts that you know, and then you also seal it yourself. And then you also have to define, no, you don't have to do that in an affidavit, but if you were to write anything else, you would have to define every word that you're using that could be construed to mean anything else. So basically, when you have that understanding of how the word games play, and you know that it is the satanic system that has constructed all these loopholes and ways to get you to consent without you knowing it, tacitly, as we say.
Right. Do you know much about the Uniform Commercial Code, I assume, then? Like, or do you use that?
Yeah, I don't, I cannot say UCC paragraph blah blah blah, because
it changes the back. I used to know it. I used to know it, but they changed it.
Whenever you apply it, you have to look it up. But I have applied it sometimes in letters to private companies in Denmark, and it has worked charmingly. They respond to it.
Hell yeah, I used it to do fair use rules and shit. Like, I mean, excuse me.
But but the amazing thing is that it works in Denmark, and that's what, people are like, how can you use the Uniform Commercial Code in Denmark?
Because it's contract law from the Saxons. And that's weird also because you guys have a bunch of lions on your shields, which I'm pretty sure are from Africa or the Semitic area, but that's cool. And also, isn't it the whole idea that the royal families are descendant from Solomon? So I guess that's like part of it.
Yeah, you see all the Egyptian fascination all over the Danish royal family today, and yet they play so innocent and so, the people don't have this conception of the Queen in Denmark that she's, well, I hear all the time.
I mean, I love her husband guy with the panda. What's the guy with the panda suit? What's his name? Like the prince?
People gotta know that she's extremely intelligent.
What's the Well, of course. I mean, he's a classically trained Harlequin like George.
But we're talking on another level of knowledge. She has to possess that, and she's playing her role perfectly. She's playing the fool perfectly.
Well,
and only a wise
not quite as well as what's the guy?
Fool perfectly, and she's playing it perfectly. And basically, she's also a usurper, right? Because all the monarchs in Europe are, according to the people of the land, and also in the respect of the hidden war between the Holy Roman Empire and the Tartarian Empire.
Oh no, Henrik died?
Yeah, he died, yes.
I'm so
sad, right?
I'm really sad about that. This guy was probably the coolest guy that lived in the 21st century. I mean,
he was a Jesuit. Did you know that?
No, really?
Yeah, he was a Jesuit and he was proud of it. Very the French traditions.
No wonder he wasn't king. Well, this is interesting.
Go back to the pandas.
We gotta watch the video. I can't put the video on. I feel like I'll get in trouble. Can I type in GIF? Maybe.
Have you looked into the Pizzagate codes?
Oh, is that panda is a code? No.
Yeah, there's a huge code about the panda, and it's basically we got the first side we got of this was from James Alefantis when he posted on Twitter a tweet about a child and something about a panda, and then he hashtag #CUMPANDA, CUM panda.
Oh, would you look at that? Interesting stuff, guys. What do you know?
Yeah, those are the logos, and I have seen this Pizzagate, or what could you say, this pedophiliac subculture. I've seen it.
It's not the most popular subject, but it's true. I mean, it's not like we can deny. I think that it's happening everywhere, and the real question is is there anybody who's not doing it, and if we can stop? I mean, who's in charge of things, and can you? Because this is that everyone wants to find. Is there a hero? Is there a Pad Piper? Is there some Pan Piper that's gonna the thing? And is there somebody in the politics who's at best an ally, because at worst just another one of the pedophiles?
Well,
so
I gotta ask. Well, in that respect, I will ask you: is it possible for an evildoer to change?
I mean,
gain a
absolutely, you can change, but you can't be forgiven for certain things.
No, but can you grow a conscience?
I mean, I don't know. I think you can grow a conscience, but I mean, yeah, I mean, if they do it in movies, I just don't think that it really matters at a certain point, though. I don't think I'm super into like mercy. Mercy means giving forgiveness for what you don't deserve. I think that's not my business. I'm not a judge. I'm not God, you know.
Do
But
you
like,
know what mercy means legally?
well, clemency, right? Essentially, or no? How would you define it?
Mm.
I'll go on
Well,
Black Law Dictionary and look it up.
we just go by the etymology, and it's from the French word merci, which means thanks.
Yeah,
And why would you say
no, because the French word is ebonics, essentially. It's slang Latin, and like the real Latin would be to get what you don't deserve. It's to have unjust forgiveness. That's like
that is true. That is true. But I was going to explain the concept of why you would say thanks. But it's basically an ironic concept. If you have watched the Pirates of the Caribbean, Davy Jones, when he catches a living man on his ship, he asks them, "Do you fear death?" And if they say yes, he shows them mercy. And what happens to them? They gain a life of slavery, or basically non-existence on the ship. And that is what has happened to us.
Minima, right?
And when you define mercy legally, it means wages. So we have been put under wages when we have been shown mercy. And that's what the Lord of the Holy Catholic Church have done. He has shown us mercy. And then when you look up something in the Catholic Church called the Gates of Mercy, a very interesting concept. And they closed in 2013, the Gates of Mercy, I think. And nobody has talked about it in the truth community, what that could mean.
Huh.
And what I see it meant, and I think it still means, is that the world system has closed down since 2012. They're only playing right now, pretending that it's still up and running. And that sounds crazy. I know.
I don't know. It's interesting.
That is how the legal system theoretically works, because what you're seeing is substance. What you're seeing are physical beings doing stuff. You're not seeing, the fundamental paperwork that, guarantees the jurisdiction internationally.
Is this the Gates of Mercy, the Lions Gate and Golden Gate?
The international jurisdiction of the sea, the Holy See, also called, is an old trust between the Venetians and the Roman Empire. And it has to be the vows. It was basically a wedding, because the concept of matrimony is how the legal system have learned about the concept of jurisdiction. If you look up matrimony, you will see links to jurisdiction in the legal in legal books, basically. So that's why when you have to give consent 3 times at a wedding, and the public gets to, has a chance to object and stuff like that. It's the most powerful form of consent. That's matrimony. And that's what the Venetians and the Holy Roman Empire did when they created the Holy See, which is a joint venture business, which is raping and pillaging the earth. Yeah. And it's what you see, all the handshakes above the heads under the triangle with the eye. That's what it means. It's the union of the Venetians and the Holy Roman Empire. And whether they are separate is debatable. If they ever were separate is also debatable. But I will have you look up that the Venice, when the Vatican was created, had this unique position in the world system as being part of the East, even though it was in the West. So that's also a weird thing. So you can see the Venetian, the seafaring empire, as the church's control over the East, and you can see the Jesuits as the church's control over the West. That's how I see it, and I don't view them as separate. but they like to, divide themselves and, play this divide and conquer theater. They play that on higher levels too, to their own officials, to those who are like, semi levels. They are subject to a dialectic as well.
Well, there's this thing with the Jesuits in South America and in Asia during the 16th century, when Japan was a third Catholic, and Macau and all of these areas in East Asia were Jesuit. All of those areas were already like full of Christians before that point, which is pretty nuts. And you look into it, there's a lot of, it's because of the idea of the spread from the apostles, however we look at at this point, the story that came out of it came from Europe through into East Asia. It came from not just the Middle East, but it came from Europe into East Asia. So there's a lot of evidence that they took over an already existing network through the spiritual organizations, because you've got lodges of people that are studying in a society that might have been otherwise, oh yeah, for sure, but otherwise an independent relationship of people. They would not even have known like how to communicate with each other except for through this network that was created by the church and people sending information back and forth. So at a certain point there was a huge network that they controlled, and I think that's like that Caesar myth, is at some point they realize that the kids who run the kids who own this empire, like the kids who own the empire today, are not there's a certain amount of nepotism, and so there needs to be training. And I think that you see that a lot in today. Some of the famous people in the world, I'd rather just avoid until at this point talking about any particular person, because they're just broadly they'll say that they're self-made when they're not. And that's the thing, they're not. The most of almost every one of them is not self-made in any respect whatsoever. And but they'll say, I lived in my car. It's like, yeah, you lived in a BMW your dad bought you in Hollywood for a weekend.
It's ridiculous. It's a repeat of the old good story about the friars and all the papal families coming from basically poverty. Oh, Francis of Assisi, blah blah blah.
Well, it probably has a lot to do with that Prince and the Pauper story, because there is a point when they switched things and they realized that the only way to make it work is that they have to teach the person what it's like to be poor. It's not that the poor person ends up being the king, but it's that the poor person needs to teach the rich person how to have sturdy peasant stock like behavior, and then they'll be able to keep running things in a Machiavellian system. And there's a lot of things about that, like in Italy in the 16th century.
It is a wonderful trick because it has this unique way of being shown, and it can be shown in two lights only. There's this dichotomy, and it's hidden, and only the guy who is looking for and also knows about the evil empire or government structure, he knows what to look for. But any subject would just view it as as the common narrative.
Something else I've been thinking about that is that language barrier, because if you don't know how to speak the language that other people are speaking, because it's like Latin, because it was Greek and there's Cyrillic, or eventually Greek and Russian have a lot of similar roots, of course. German and Sanskrit have pretty much similar roots. So looking into this amalgamation that might have been, I don't know much enough about the phonemes and etymology of Guarani to speak on this, but I think that that's an interesting language I want to look into more, because it's so specific that Paraguay, of all countries, has its own language. In South America, everyone speaks Spanish or Portuguese, but the Jesuit country speaks Guarani. So I wonder what that's about, and I think that it's probable that that language has some interesting qualities to the grammar that make it useful, because I'd be on buses seeing old ladies learning Spanish because they weren't used to speaking it in Paraguay. So I mean, it's not even that it's uncommon It's that it's common and it's uncommon to not speak it. It's 98% speaking a native
You
language.
speak Spanish then, do you?
Sí, hablar español. ¿Qué onda? Pero
Yo
con el
también.
acento de un tortuga ninja, you know, cowabunga. I sound like a Ninja Turtle,
So you
probably.
haven't been exactly Spanified yet.
Yeah, no. I sound like Bienvenido Disneyland, you know, like very unique. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's
I
cool.
can get
That's
by
cool.
in
I
this.
love the Spanish language. I learned it myself when I lived in Costa Rica for a year.
That's pretty excellent. Costa Rica is a great location for the history, because like the 19th century, you get this like entrance of all of these people that couldn't get in the United States or people that left the United States. Like the hotels are run by
all those who left the United States. What did they get up to in Costa Rica?
Oh my God, so many of them are. I know people that do it all the time. One time I was filling my gas tank, and someone with the exact same car as me on the other side was like, "I'm selling my car and moving to Costa Rica right now." And like people do it all the time. But the thing about Costa Rica is it's like originally, you know, there's a lot of gypsies. There's a lot of Jewish people that couldn't get into the United States. A lot of Moors that weren't here, and a lot of Italians and Sicilians and mobsters and French mob. The French mob left Louisiana.
Weird melting pot, and you don't see it on the surface. They kind of look similar.
Yeah, but then a lot of organized crime in South America. That's the thing that's kind of makes. I mean, not to say that everybody is, but like, yeah, no, every country has organized rackets. I wouldn't say crime is even the right word, because it might have become a crime later, but it was just you've just got organizations of people and families and things that run things. And you know, the world gets really interesting when you look into like who knows who, because that's it's not just the club. The club makes it possible. Then you have to be like talking to people they don't have to be nice to each other, you know.
No.
But like they make relationships, and then you've got Ford and Firestone. So, you know.
yeah, that's basically right. Yeah. Oh well.
Really quickly, did you have anything that you wanted to show? You were saying you had some screen share stuff. Look at your Facebook group.
Maybe I'll just show like this crazy book. Oh, that was a lot of them.
All right. Yeah, books are good.
Just like a little thing, like to go out with the mud flood, perhaps.
But also at some point we need to show off a little bit, because you've got this great group that you moderate, and it's
it's actually the credit goes to Josh from the U.S.
Josh created the group, and we'll have Josh on at some point, hopefully, because we can talk to Josh. It'd be great. But also having you moderate the group, you've been like really useful, and like we should introduce just like what's going on with that. Also, probably the Google. There's a Google group that I started that is collecting photos. Anyone can join. Put media of any kind that we can't put on YouTube or something, right? Like we'll put it there, and it'll be open links for people.
It's such a good idea, because I have like basically the last 6 or 7 or 8 months, I think, I have been digging like every day on the archives, Gallica, the Zurich Library, archives.org, everything basically, any search word you can ponder.
Yeah, so I certainly get a little look at that on the screen share at the end of this. I think that people want to see what there's access to, and like I said, this is all just available to everybody. This is completely open educational resources. No signups or anything.
Yeah, if you can see this, just quick. This is viewable.
That's so crazy. And then you're like, and I've heard this all my life is the crazy thing too. Like my dad went to school in Vienna, so like I know about how they just paved over Rottenburg and Wien and everything. It's just like, look at that. It's right there. Nobody denied it, and no one just mentioned it. That's all it is.
And also look at this crazy boat and the gyro.
Wow.
And look at the arts inside. Like, is this functionality? Is this really, is this function put into use?
Well, have you seen Coral Castle? I assume.
Yeah, I have. He's amazing.
Everyone. I think everyone probably has, but just in case, when you're done with the book, I'll bring it up a bit.
It's amazing what he did, and Martin has found like this hidden side of things. where we can see that he basically had people in during the day, help him out with some, basic stuff, and then at night he kicked them out, and then he had this little box on top of this crane, this mini crane, and that box was metal.
Right.
And nobody knows what that box is and what it does, basically.
Well, the FBI agents who took it from him probably figured it out, I guess, or somebody working for them did. But I mean, what we get is the idea that it uses the crystal. It uses the crystal.
Sorry, I have to hijack you a bit. We have to, decide what's up with this.
Let's look at this. What does it say? Empire State Building.
Yeah. We have to, view these. We have all seen these photos and movies.
Lift it up higher. I can't see the guy.
Oh yeah, the guy. This is. Basically, it says that he's giving a signal to queue up beams.
He's giving a signal to queue up the beams to bring them up.
To hew, to hew stone.
Like to cut them?
No, to pull them up by some, line or liver or something.
So he's giving signals to pull up the beam?
Yeah.
What's that?
I wonder how many died doing that.
So what are you saying? You think that this is a photo, like a photo glossed airbrush?
These photos have to be constructed or fabricated in some kind of way. Just the how did they build the Empire State? Like running around like little ants on top of the scaffolding.
Well, I mean, I've known some people that have worked in building constructions, like up in. I've heard some pretty nuts stories actually from some people. Like I remember one time I started smoking pot when I was like 13 years, 14, I was probably 16, but I want to sound cool. And my mom got my uncle to like tell me that, like that I was a bad kid. And he was like my mom's sister's married guy, and he's a construction worker, and he'd been alive in the 70s. So I was like, whoa, I better call, because he's like, yeah, I remember when I was on top of the 60. I was like, yep, my thing was speed. I was injecting speed while I was swinging on a beam. I was like, okay, damn. All right. Wow. Like, so there's, or maybe it was cocaine or crack or something, but it's just, the idea was horrifying. And I realized, there are construction workers that they just gave a bunch of drugs because they, or not, maybe they just were alcoholics, but in the 19th century.
But if you drug them up, like imagine like them.
The amount of deaths. Yeah, the amount of deaths that happened. God, there must have been incredible amounts of deaths.
They must have been dropping by the hour. Like people must have stood on the streets like, now we're gonna see one fall now, Larry. $10.
Well, I mean, have you seen Mr. Magoo? Do you know about Mr. Magoo? I would ask you.
No, I don't think so.
I don't know what you can get away with anymore, but let's see here. I can go here. I can open this. Mr. Magoo. All the old Americans know this thing. Mr. Magoo is an amazing, amazing man. My name is Magoo. His name's in the book.
Yeah.
Walk blindly wherever he went, and he'd have a fantastic day. But he was constantly walking off of I guess the best is Leslie. Oh, there we go. He's falling. He's always landing on the next plate wherever he goes, so he doesn't fall. But that's the whole joke, is that he doesn't fall off of the building while everyone else around him is, falling. But maybe, that's what. I mean, so I do think, after watching the amusement parks thing, I hope you understand. I do think that there were reconstructions, especially after the 17th century. A lot of this stuff was probably devastated. A lot of the interiors probably had to have wood floors rebuilt, and stairs and things that set up the towers. I think that there was a lot of stuff that they had to fix. But I don't think that and I also think that they started learning how to build buildings again properly, because that they probably inherited this technology. I mean, originally they were speculative. You have to remember.
They probably did this thing that you see always in movies, where the evil guy hijacks the basically the neutral technician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
see that's a common theme, right?
Right.
And I think that's basically what happens, that they hijack them, threaten them, and, it all works out.
So do you have do you want to show off the some of your either photos or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
website?
I didn't actually get to test it because
Eh.
we went in a little quickly.
Oh, you know what else we got to talk about while you're setting that up? Thanks for reminding me. Tivoli.
What's that? The Jubilee.
Tivoli. I spell it.
Oh, no, yeah, I thought you said Jubilee. The Jubilee.
The Jubilee.
No, okay, yeah. Jubilee is
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Copenhagen Tivoli, right? I can't spell
Yeah.
Danish things. It's crazy. I got it.
Yeah, it's filled with Eastern Byzantium architecture, or what we would call Tartarian architecture.
Byzantium.
And we have all. I have strolled around this park always my whole life, thinking it was like this, basically like a movie cast, something put together quickly.
Put together
But
quickly?
now,
What do you mean put together quickly?
no. And who did this? Who are the amazing?
I can't believe this was. I always thought this was built back when Danish people were sober, before Christiania. And
Well, you have a good point there, right? Okay, I would like to dive proving who built those, and I mean by that finding construction photos, hard evidence, or maybe just something like not just something parrot history, some a good reference, like by a guy who is perhaps not mentioned by Wikipedia, that says something about building these structures and how they did it.
Yeah,
I would be very
you'll find it hard to find pictures of this stuff, but you'll also find that there's another one just like this, which is a Chile amusement.
Yeah, you told me about
Chicago. I can't remember the name every day. Fantasylandia, of course. Why would I forget that? So
wow.
Fantasylandia is
On the
legit,
subject of Holland and Atlantis, huh?
and it's changed a bunch because they wanted it to be modernized in the 90s. But like literally it was identical at one point. It had just like old buildings and things like that. I wish I could find a good picture.
Also to consider some of the old amusements, or some of the rides. Some of them could be like very old. But what I don't get is the whole thing about the size, the scale thing. It seems to be built for our size, right? So
well, I mean, so that's the thing. There's about 5/8 size. Maybe there's something about that. And then also Danish people are slightly taller, I think, than the Asiatic people.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
there's a lot more Homo florensis or florensis in the East.
But everybody is looking to Tivoli on this question in Denmark. But there's actually an older amusement park in Copenhagen.
Really? Which one?
It's called Bugge. Basically, translated the hill. Bugge, Dyrhaven. And it stretches back into the 16th century, I think.
No,
okay, so BAKK. No, and it's an EN. Yes, and then Dyrhaven, DY. Yeah, that's also good.
Cheating.
And yeah, that's basically it doesn't have old world structures, I think, but there are very old wooden rides.
Right. Well, this is something that's interesting about the redwood rides here, because we have very old rides that are basically torn apart.
Right now, you're looking at the oldest amusement park in the world, reportedly.
This is very interesting. All right, I better open that up and look into that some more.
Yeah.
But in the redwoods, okay, fairy tale land in Oakland was a place that now it still exists, and like he was saying about Bakken is not the same as it was because they tore out all the cool stuff. Yeah. And the cool stuff is now basically simple. They've got like a place for a theater to be done, and they do like these things. But in like 1930, let's say, they probably got photos, or 1940. I don't know. When Disney went there, it was huge, and it had wish you could find like vintage history something. It had stuff. It had trains. It had Ferris wheels that had swings. It had roller coasters and things like that. I don't know. I mean, it was definitely more interesting than it is now, where it's just a small little park on the side of the bay, and Disney built its park based on it. But I think also Disney bought actually parts of it. There's like boat rides and things like that. Like, so it's not like nothing. And this was just a community thing at the time. It wasn't that. It wasn't so unique, as it is now, sounding like Disneyland is like Disney.
No.
Like, at the time, there was just amusement parks a lot more places at that time, all over the country or the world. But
quite. And also with they went along with the fairs and the expositions, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's something also, since we're talking about the history of clowns and the
clown. Well, I have I've studied that a lot. Steiner, Steiner, Rudolph Steiner.
Classically trained clowns, like really well trained harlequins that are like geniuses at theater, that really like they want to prove to you that they're funny. Like those kinds of clowns come historically from the harlequin.
Yeah, I've seen those.
And so the harlequin, you'll find them wearing black or white faces often.
They look like Venetian masks.
They're Venetian masks. And the thing is, these probably comes from Dalmatian outfits or Tartarian outfits, probably. But that's what clown clothes comes from. And you'll notice that it's not necessarily Dalmatian because he's not wearing a cravat. But there are clowns that wear cravats. But this attack was very popular at the time, the 1670. This is like puritanical times. They love to wear those.
So it has to be the inspiration for the Jesuitical theater.
Yeah, but also probably the inspiration comes from Tartaria. This is the style. If you look at the fairy tale folk clothing, it is Tartarian essentially. And so you start looking into. It's not useful.
You see how Google flood us with all this bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, luckily I'm DuckDuckGoing it, which is like the only reason. But yeah, if I really wanted to, I would use Gabiru. Anybody who really wants to do things, check out this Gabiru anonymous uncensored search engine. It's pretty legit. I like Brave, but they recommend Firefox. Firefox is pretty cool because they use Rust. I recommend Firefox ethically, at least, but who knows. So anyway, the clothing that they wore in the ancient times were Harlequin-like, and so I get the feeling that these colorful, awesome, interesting outfits became clowns. And now, we make fun of them. And then at that time, what did Puritans wear? Just for perspective, they didn't dress so much like clowns. I mean, they did, but maybe that's what clowns really should look like. And then you look into what the reason is. Well, it's like look into
in Freemasonic allegory that can explain that history, I guess, because what I find is that Freemasonic allegory is like I saw it beautifully. Have you ever seen the Danish comedy show called Clown? It's basically called Clown.
Clown.
It's very famous in Hollywood circles, actually. But it's basically these two comedians in Denmark, and they do this concept where they play themselves as famous comedians, but then they film their lives into episodes, and then it's fiction. So it's kind of fun. But basically, there's an episode where
I'll watch Danish stuff. Sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, it's okay. But basically, there is an episode where the Freemasons is in it, and one of the comedians, he's into Freemasonry, and he tries to get the other one into it as well. And the other one, he goes out playing role-playing games as Lord of the Rings. And as he does that out into the woods, this awkward moment comes when he crosses like a road, and then two Freemasons are watching him and judging him by his foolishness. He was primed to go into the Freemasons, and now they are watching him playing around with fools out in the forest, like role-playing games. And the whole joke of that scene is that is the exact same thing that the Freemasons are doing.
Yeah.
role-playing games.
Yeah,
And then
role-playing games.
you can reduce it to that.
That's all it is.
And it's beautifully laid out as a joke, but you gotta know how it works before you can see the joke. But it's beautifully laid out, and it's an inside joke because
Somebody
it goes
was
back
asking
into
about
itself.
somebody was asking about pop culture references to that, and I was thinking, was it the SpongeBob episode? I don't know if I can find that really off the top of my head, but we should look into that also. Is is examples in the media where they're trying to get people interested, like SpongeBob.
Oh yeah, SpongeBob Freemasonry. There's also a Simpson episode, the Stonecutters episode.
Right, the Stonecutters episode. There's a lot of symbolism to it, but
They've been showing you all this your entire lives. You
right.
just haven't known if you are new to this.
Yeah, that's the thing, and it's that's really what I find interesting about that is it's all part of the fact that it's no longer considered dark, or it's not associated. Like, first thing they did was they deconstructed it from evil. They said, okay, well, being evil isn't being evil. There's a bunch of people that advocate it that are being professionals that wake up in the morning and are sober. But that doesn't mean that there aren't good people that are evil. And then therefore it doesn't mean that there aren't bad people that are good and there aren't bad people that are evil. And so the symbolism itself became disconnected and now everyone's okay with it. Not everyone, thank God, but like a lot of people. A lot of people though, they look at this stuff and they think it's cool. That's all it is. And
yeah. It's on clothes. People have it as pop tattoos, and if you try to engage with them, like, what do you know the meaning of the symbol? Do you have any knowledge on it? And it's like, no, it's just cool. And then if you try to pique their imagination about something about the symbol, they just like, why are you trying to put in stuff into my tattoo? Does it go away?
Yeah, that's my life story, man. I used to do my main thing originally was making projection videos. So and then a couple of my videos that are like my older videos that I still have are the they're mixes of cartoons and things like that of the symbolism that I found to be so definitively self-evident, and these people would go to a club. And so the reason I did that was because originally I wanted to make movies, but then some girl was like, "Oh, that's interesting. You want to make movies in college?" And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" And she's like, "Well, people have to want to see a movie, so they have to be in a little box." And I was like, "Well, what would you do if you wanted to be heard? If you wanted your message out there?" She's like, "I would get into advertising because then I could just in ads." I was like, you diabolical. Okay, yeah, let's go.
I get it.
But it's that they just put it into music videos and things like that. And then the problem with that is that you're right. People eventually, I thought that there's the truth movement and the obey movement, and I was really blown away that the obey people were like, yeah, obey sounds cool. I would go with them. It's like, what the hell is going on, you people? But that
it's divine comedy of spiritual metaphysics rolling out into your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to say about the role-playing games, because if you are watching, as a lot of people are right now, Netflix, and I don't advocate watching Netflix because it's basically from
Absolutely. I advocate cutting your subscription if possible.
Yeah, but basically my girlfriend has a subscription, so I sometimes catch what is on. And
everyone's story.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I'm guilty of being not able to preach.
Basically Thoreau, goddamn you. All right. So.
Yeah. but yeah, she's watching the show called Riverdale.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Right now, in the most recent season, they have this whole thing about a role-playing game called, and wait for it, Griffins and Gargoyles.
Oh, well.
Okay, so a spin-off of Dungeons and Dragons, and we all know what happened to those who play Dungeons and Dragons. You've seen Stranger Things. When you play Dungeons and Dragons, when you play a role-playing game, the Hollywood wants to talk about is when you play a role-playing game, when you put your imagination completely into it, you create it. It gets created, and it unfolds in the real world.
And that's
what Freemasonry is about.
It's
That
a
is what
new
ritual,
paradigm.
that's what the ceremonial magic is about. It can only be done when you have an existing structure you're dominating with, you're dominating their perception, and then you can do ceremonial magic. It can also be done within those who are performing the ritual. But when you do that, you actually create a role-playing game, and that's why they want common people into Freemasonry. You see it? They
Yeah.
want common people. They want a mixed, um, a mixed spectatorship on these rituals, because it creates the mental bridge into the real world, into the world of common men and women. And that's the whole deal about the role-playing game, and that's the whole deal about the mask and the person. It's that's the whole deal esoterically. In law, the person is something you should completely look into if you want to ever understand legislation, legalese, law, any of it. You have to start with the term person, and it's a difficult term to understand.
So tell me
And that's
about.
exactly why law is misperceived.
Let's talk about personship. Like, let's talk about personship. What is?
I just wrote my bachelor on this subject. I'm surprised it went through, but
Well,
I know my professors know this too, and I've looked them into the eyes, and they have agreed with me that the person is a construct of fiction, and it is only used to gain jurisdiction. It's only used to bring nature into artificiality. To say it very fine.
So is all artificial persons like capitis diminutum maxima? Are the capital letters which represent that a name has had all rights removed? The clemency mercy thing we were talking about earlier.
That's only an well, it's complicated because it's not prudent to pay so much attention to the capitalization if you ever want to just gain your freedom. If you ever want to just gain your freedom and stand before a judge and see them off very quickly, I would advise anyone to look up Steve McRae from the UK, and he has the most brilliant method to go in and just be done in 5 minutes, basically. And you don't have to say a word. You just need a pen and a piece of paper, and then you write an affidavit, and then it's goodbye. Basically, that's what you can do when you know law. Then the positions of the system reverts back to your favor, and that's how it's supposed to be. The reason why we're into slavery mode is because people don't know this, and maybe there are higher causes for that, but the results are the same. The result is that people are complicit in all this. And that's how
theory that slavery used to be like slavery used to be. I mean, as a Croatian, maybe it's a bias.
Slavic people. They just associated the Slavic people with the concept of subjugation and domination.
But like look into Glagolithic. Do you know about the Glagolithic language? So like Croatians, that's Dalmatia's at one point this is probably
Dalmatia, right?
Dalmatia. Yeah, and what's the history? Somebody who called themselves the Roman Empire at some point in history, this is now what we're saying, said to there's a story about a Caesar with a daughter, and she was kind of a wild woman, let's say, and she and Rome was a wild city. So to get her out of the city for embarrassment's sake, put her into Dalmatia, and the Caesar said, "Look, whatever you need, I will be fine. I will keep you happy. Like I will give you the world, just keep her, just for a little bit of Croatia." And this little king, this like lord of the, the serfdom area, he said, "I will keep Croatia. You keep Rome. I'll keep Croatia." I don't. It's like they don't. You keep the world. Sorry, you keep the world. I'll keep Croatia. So there's a lot to that spot and to the history and like to the aqueducts and to the stone buildings, but also the Bible being from there, and like the collection of the books, like the studying by the monks, and the creation of Glagolithic, the lost script. Because we talk about Roman, which is from Etruscan, and we talk about Cyrillic, which is from Greek, but or arguably, we can get into where it's really from. But the truth is there was another language that was like more practical, because it's sort of the Swahili. It studied all of the different symbols of all the different places, Glagolithic. And so Croatians, they they were I think that maybe being a slavery might have been a term of not just endearment, but of like high status, because it meant that you were someone who spoke 8 or 9 languages and ran the ship. It was the butler. It was the guy with the tie. It was Albert. And so at some point that shifted, probably in the 10th, 13th century, when all of a sudden during the beginning of
is this the redemption of communism?
no, thank God, thank God. No, and I'm actually pretty anti-communism.
Me
I
too.
think I would like to separate. I'd like to separate the idea of the modern enslavement of people and what is, but the word itself. I'm saying the etymology of the word probably came from people on boats. Like there's this system of rowing men that ran a boat, and they took over the system, and then they turned people into objects. And they use these terms a lot that
perfect sense. I have old world books on Roman law, on common law, and Roman private law. I have one right here.
But like the president of the United States and most of these guys who wear suits, they're dressed like a Croatian ship deck first mate butler. Captain Cook's first mate, who wrote Aloha Oi for Hawaii, like that song is from Croatia. It's a Dalmatian rhythm. So there's a lot of the sailors that were Croatian, and that's where a lot of that symbolism comes from.
That is how we're going to reconstruct history, by words, I think.
Yeah, basically.
And because the whole thing of reconstruction and reconstructing anything has been like you do it by the least expected method, I find. We're reconstructing history right now by an exceeding, very fleeting idea about an empire that might have existed, but we're finding out that it did. And this fleeting idea is so powerful. It is so powerful that everybody gets talking about it because the idea embodies both a hidden history and a hidden meaning of life. That's how I see it.
But that's also why, it's interesting you brought up communism, because in slavery and communism, I'm from California, so I got a problem, I'm basically upside down as you get, from everything. There was a point when Eastern philosophy probably seemed unique because it was unique, it was foreign, But at this point, European philosophy is just as foreign to me. So, and in fact, I would say more, because I got a yoga club down the street and plenty of people will talk to you about Krishna consciousness. It's actually pretty much like the most conservative thing you can do besides be a Satanist. So it's like the thing is, like in the 18th century when they started talking about them, we're not the first kids to grow out our hair when we were teenagers. Like in the 18th century, like Albert Pike had been doing Kundalini yoga. And so all of these dudes are talking about communism. Well, they're talking about stuff that they don't understand, or maybe they do a little bit, but they're evil and they're definitely not explaining everything. And that's the worst thing, guys. I think that if we're going to have a word to describe the other, it should be the outsiders, because there's the inside, right? And the outsider. We're the outsiders from this inside, because this idea that there should be a wall that we keep outsiders from is the blasphemy. So you have to reveal as much as you can. Granted, it can't always be the truth because it's your perception, but you can at least reveal that that's the case of it. But okay, so we're talking just a second ago. I'm sorry, I lost my train.
that happens. I study philosophy. We get off track the moment we start.
Yeah, well, because you were talking about defining words, that got me back. Okay, so communism. Yeah. So this idea that communism is like the definition of like a shared resource economy, it's just really it's just mischievous, because it's not the first usage. It's not even the first known in the West usage, and there's plenty of usages that they walked upon the Arawak Indians, living in Howard Zinn and shit.
Modern revival of it took on such a Talmudic spirit.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting thing.
Nobody saw that. It's shocking that it's not taught that Karl Marx didn't actually call himself Karl Marx, and nobody around him did.
And most of the books were written by
Levi. End of. That's who he were. And that was his Jewish ancestry right in plain sight. And he did not write a thing of the book. as we know, all the great works are not done by individually, as George Orwell lets out in his book. So it's kind of this meta, George always tells you in the book that, Winston, no single book is produced individually.
Yeah, yeah,
and then you gotta think about,
that's the thing.
The book you're reading right now.
It comes back to like the French Theosophical, court, where they work together with like Jeremy Bentham's a big part of it, Robert Owen's a big part of it, Madame Blavatsky.
Yeah, she's the hidden key to understanding all this.
Yeah. So
she is the most enigmatic figure, one of the most enigmatic figures of history, and there's so much bullshit about her. And there's also a lot of things we cannot accept that we know everything about her, so we should, keep our minds open. But there's another hidden figure around her times. I don't know if you've heard about him, and it's not that ascension guy in New Age spirituality. He's called Saint Germain. He went under a lot of different names, but many people have written books about him. Yep. And this figure he needs to be understood. He needs to be decoded.
I secretly quote him every once in a while. I'll be like, in some of my videos, I'll say something that, like, or at least I'll like paraphrase.
But again, I think I have cracked the code. The reason why at Saint Germain can disappear, and 1 year and the month after he's like in another part of Europe, like up and running with a new factory and stuff like that, if you know the story. The reason why he can do that is basically because he's not one person. As I said, Freemasonry is a role-playing society more than anything. And what you also find if you look into the connection between Freemasonry and Jack the Ripper is that Jack the Ripper is basically a ritual, and he is a role that you as in a certain path of Freemasonry has to take. And that means, yes, I'm saying what it means. It means that you are going to kill, you're going to murder an innocent woman in order to progress through the grade. That is what it has to mean. Because we have abundant circumstantial evidence that Jack the Ripper was not one person, and we have also literature alluding to, also Sorrow. That might be another tale for that.
Well, this is a Dread Pirate Roberts. So he, in Princess Bride, he has to switch his identity every generation.
Yeah, and basically that's what you see happening to the great Hollywood actors and pop stars. They are played. They are played by other people sometimes. The person who's playing Cher right now, the old lady Cher, she is in her 30s or something. It's like, you gotta check it out. You gotta go watch Cher from 2018. She's not Cher. I think I saw it on Russian Vids or something, but it was like, if that's not a hoax, it's got to be the most clear bullshit you have. Yeah, that's probably Cher 2018. And she look up when Cher was born, like the real Cher. And she also says she also says in an interview, the new Cher, I've seen this, that she refers to herself in third person. So she comments on herself saying, "I don't like her music."
Well, there's a lot to be said about imprinting. Like, when you make a movie, I know a lot of actors will become the character. I think Sean Penn refused to refer to himself as anything other than his character during the making of his film, especially as a kid. He made his parents refer to him as Spicoli or whatever character he was playing. So a lot of these guys get imprinted with these characters.
But also with Paul McCartney, we all know the story of Paul McCartney or Paul McCartney.
Right? Yeah, totally. And so, but the thing is, and they end up acting like surgery. Like they all end up acting like this character because they study the character so much that after they're done playing the role, that the character's still in them. So even when in situations where they're not even trying to become this person, like they end up getting imprinted with like these really, really deep realisms that are, it's a sort of Jesuit staging that, that actually works in a lot of ways to imprint on people. But earlier you were talking about Saint Germain, and I don't know. I mean that's an interesting thing, but I get the feeling that death's a mug's game, as Neil Gaiman says in The Sandman, and so I don't think that it's necessarily untrue that Saint Germain created the Philosopher's Stone and kept it for himself
Yeah,
because he was
but
a
he always goes
spiritualist.
on his coat under his code name, and the description of his looks is always kind of like, yeah, it's pretty like generic, general, easy to say, or there's not anything very detailed about him.
True.
Um, and all his works could be done by other people, and it's just attributed to this enigmatic figure of history, and these works haven't actually performed any function, as far as I'm concerned, into the philosophy of men. It hasn't really made a contribution, I think.
Well, I mean, it had up until I think until the 20th century a lot, because for instance, one of the Saint Germain's things was to say, like, if you want to learn how to make this stuff work, you're gonna have to acknowledge that God exists. You can't. I mean, you don't have to like him.
Yeah.
And that's the funny thing about some of these evil people. They try to make sure other people don't acknowledge that it exists, but they know it exists. They don't like
But they
it.
dislike it.
Yeah.
And that's also funny about the word. Any word that has the prefix "dis," meaning a negation or something. Well, the word "dis" comes from Latin, and it means the god of the underworld. And it's sometimes attributed to Pluto, and sometimes attributed to Jupiter. So yeah. So any word with "dis," discord, dislike, discard, anything with that is the god of the underworld. And the words go back to astrology, basically, and astrotheology. It can also go in other directions, I find, but you can always revert them back to astrology and the planets. That's so, especially the bigger words, the words of art, as they call them in the legal books. I want to show you something funny about the legal system to the viewers of yours that doesn't know this. If you go into Google, and DuckDuckGo, sorry, I'm newbie.
Here,
I'm rookie.
go on your do the screen share. Show it on the screen share.
Okay, I'll just have it up first. Okay.
Cool.
It's shared. Yeah, Black's Law Dictionary. You can find Black's Law Dictionary online. And that is the best dictionary to learn the legalese language.
Everyone should own the Black's Law Dictionary, I would say.
Yes.
At least download it, but like it's probably hard to get the 10th or 11th edition downloaded. So I would say it's worth it. It's the most important book about words you'll ever own.
Yeah, basically, because it's like if you view it as in Harry Potter, it's the defense against the dark arts. You can view it as that.
That's
if I'm going down a really nerdy road, you can just call me out, and I'll go back.
No. I was going to bring up the Black's Law Dictionary earlier. I held back a bit, so thank you. Thanks for being.
Okay, so just what I'm seeing right now, right? Right?
So you went to the blackslawdictionary.org, and what edition is that? This is second edition. Interesting.
The second edition that is, and what you'll find is that it has spelling mistakes, but they do that to avoid copyright things, I guess.
Wow.
But basically, the meaning is always, retained. So cool. In the civil law, that is the law where we are all in right now. We're in the civitas. An adult is considered a male infant. And you'll have to look up both the definition of male and infant within the legal dictionary to actually get the real meaning of this. But if you go by the common meaning, they are saying that an adult is nothing more than an infant. Get that? And who has attained the age of 14. So they're also associating the age of 14 with infancy. Do you get that?
Yeah, very much like, like time.
It's crazy. They are calling you stupid in their books. They're basically defining you as an incompetent, belligerent slave without, making it sound fancy as well. That's what they do, and they have to give remedy. You know, when people talk about how they operate, they talk about as if there's this law of darkness, as I've heard it been called, and that is the law of lesser magic, that you have to show everything in plain sight in order for your magic to work. But you can also view it in the light of law, where in any law or legislative statute, anything, there always has to be remedy. There cannot be constructed any law without remedy. And that's basically it. There always has to be an open hole. The world cannot conceal itself completely into, into this Saturnian principle of contraction, because that's also how you can view Jupiter and Saturn in law. You can view Saturn as contraction and Jupiter as expansion. That comes from astrology as well. And Saturn and the contract is basically all about contracts. It's the Saturnian maritime aspect of Saturn, which is basically the goat, the sea goat. And that's why the sewer systems are defined in law as a goat, because everything in law, everything in admiralty law is about money or currency. And the currency is, as we call them, liquid. They are liquids, likvider in Danish. And that is why the sewer system is the goat, because the goat directs the liquids of the city into the sea, which is the Holy See in the Vatican. And if you go into words, Latin, you can see that, Silla, which means the Holy Seat, is a toilet. So you get that vortex picture in your mind, where the water goes down the drain, and that is basically what the goat does. It reverts the water from the city, the stolen liquids, into the Holy See, and the Holy See is in the jurisdiction of the Venetian Vatican joint venture business, which is pillaging the earth, and that is that toilet of shit it goes down into. And this is all symbolically, of course. This isn't happening, but that is how the words are constructed to tell you the story of who is running things.
Well, since you're going there, I kind of feel like it'd be more fun to do this thing I was working on with you involved. So why don't I include you really quickly in this awareness and reality thing that I'm working on? We'll do that back and forth while we talk. Make sure that it's on both things at the same time. Can you see both?
Okay, how do I go off my screen share then?
Well, no. I'll just include it. You can. Did you want to continue? I was just holding it. Did you had some? I could go into that like right now, or we could do it in a minute. But do you still have the thing open? You were going to show from the Scandinavian history, or do you want to do that?
Yeah. We need to go over that.
Let's do that really quickly. I'm about to unravel if we go into this. So
I'll just do it quickly. Oh my god, I have to hate. Yeah. Okay, people got a quick cleanse into my private life. Okay, so this is what I found in a Swedish geography book, and you're viewing this, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So basically this is in old Swedish, so it was very difficult for me to, to translate either way. It says up here, this Stora Tartariet, the great Tartary, and that is an empire, and it's present in a geography book from 1730, I think. I'll have to look that up again. Okay, but here it says east, right, China. So, and this is border. So it borders to the east to China, it borders to the south to India, it borders to the west to Persia, and to the north, Oceanum Septentrionalem. Septentrion means the land of the north, and that is Hyperborea, and it means the north. So this is the Northern Sea, the Siberian Sea today, and also called the Tartarian Sea. These are rivers, Gibun, Sibun, Irtis, Obi, and basically there's this story about them, how they work, but it's not really that interesting. This is the interesting part. which I wanted to put into, out into the ether. This basically tells you that, okay, let's start from here. This word ortholomo, it means the great lama, the great priest, and it says the Den Stora Lama, the great lama, and it further states de är alla prästers präst. As a it means that is the priest of all priests. Well, that sounds like a rivaling title to the papacy, don't you think?
Did you say llama? How did you pronounce that?
Yeah, lama.
Whoa,
Lama.
the llama.
The great lama.
The Buddha.
And it says they are alle prästers präst, which means that is the priest of all priests. So if they call him that, the Grand Lama, doesn't that sound like the current Orthodox church head in Russia right now, and how he is the second most powerful religious figure in the world? Doesn't that sound like remnants of this great Lama tradition? And it further states that this Lama was above everything else in the empire, so perhaps even above Genghis Khan.
It kind of sounds like the Tibetan Lama, but it could be all the. I mean, obviously, there's lamas in different places. We should look into the term. Lama could be Z. It could be Jama.
True.
One thing.
What I find interesting is though this Lama is called the priest of all priests.
Why is
it sounds like a pope? What are you saying?
The script doesn't look the same as the other script. Do you notice this? It's like it's a little bit wider. It's a little bit less old-fashioned looking somehow, like Lama.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about that.
Yeah, and also it's in Dog Latin. Why is it capitalized? It's always a good question.
Right,
why would they capitalize?
Usually, in the old days, capitis diminutio maxima, which was what it meant. So if it means the rights have been removed from this thing, that would be interesting.
So yeah, that would make sense that we're writing that this is written after this great Lama
stamped outwards to replace it. They're like, and this is the last king or whatever it was, the Lama, and we've removed its rights or whatever.
Yeah. But where was I coming from? But basically, okay. And it's very difficult to read this. But
sorry, you were saying that it was that this is the king of the kings, and that you thought it was the Eastern Russian.
Yeah. Well, there is this. If you look up the head of the Orthodox Church, right? You see this word "ortho." It sounds like ortho, right? Like Orthodox. So I just, and the Orthodox Lama, and I kind of thought that this position was kind of like the old papacy, and the Vatican tradition is basically what it could steal from whatever this guy knew.
That's pretty interesting. I mean, the idea that it's like the rights removed from the order, or the orthos means perfection in Greek. So the perfect the perfect priest.
Yeah, so that's why they also call it the Orthodox, right? The doxa, Orthodoxa. Do you know doxa, right?
What is doxa? Well, I mean, no.
That's also.
I don't know the root of that word.
I also get doxa here to seem perfect. Orthodox. That's right. That's kind of interesting, right?
Whoa. I feel kind of doxa.
But also doxa has other accepted meanings.
Feeling kind of doxy today. It's nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
It also has other accepted meanings, also in the ancient times. So we might not, jump to conclusions. I just thought it was funny to seem perfect. Orthodox.
Well, yeah. I was gonna show a real quick bit of this presentation, and I figure just because you are the kind of person, it sounds like this is what you're kind of interested in right now. So let me see if this is working. If I just freeze this thing. Oh, there we go. Whoa, so many buttons, so fast. All right. Can you see this or not? Is it black screen, or can you see the screen?
I'm seeing it through my screen share, right?
Yeah, but everyone
Yeah.
can see it, I hope. Let me make sure that that's yeah. All right.
Yeah. Well,
So
no, it's black. It's black. It's black for me.
it's black. Oh, bollocks. Okay. So I have
So
to just increase this window like that, and then remove the format, and then view the navigator. And can I go away? No.
oh, is
Whatever.
any
This is good
I
enough. This is good enough. So I was going to talk a little about interstellar because
yeah.
we've been talking a lot about this idea that outer space is inner space, and it's not a new idea. It's something that goes back a long time. Like
Yeah.
actually, these are the original star maps and how people would travel through astral space. Is that they would measure, this extra outside of the terrestrial layer reality or whatever you want to call this, the study of the study
Yeah.
within or revolving a subject or a luminary as an interstellar travel, and then they would visit these realms and they would talk to these crazy, evil, possibly monsters. Um,
Yeah.
and examples of this that might not be evil, but or might also be, but or at least are interesting, or uses of the imagination that provide more awareness from other realities, such as we were talking about Henry Darger, who is sort of like the non-famous Frank Baum and created this 15,000 page longest book in history with his own outsider artists, his own art, The Realms of the Unreal, which is
Yeah.
crazy story about sort of the civil war where these evil men fight these little girls, and
Crazy.
whether or not he was he believed this was real or this was really happened, it was enough that he created this whole thing. So he's clearly committed enough to Tartaria that he would make it happen, that he would spend this energy on this thing, that it was so sorry. Sorry. Oh, yeah. So whether or not he knew it or not, like he might have been revealing something that was true that he knew about only because he survived this crazy life that and he'd come from this world that had existed. So that gets into like this idea of like of the realism, the real qualities of magic and people that were studying this crazy stuff. Like, and one of the weirdest ones and one of the scariest ones who did some of the strangest things was John Dee. But he did, create this septagram, which was a 7-pointed star. At least he built this one, and it was designed for trapping a spirit inside of another spirit of in the realm of the one creator, so that you could use the energies of an evil thing or a non-god aligned thing to your benefit. And it was supposed to be something that Solomon used to build his temples according to tradition. And I have no sound. Is that what you said? Sorry, let me make sure that everything's cool with Victor. Do you want a second? Let me read also some comments really quickly. Sorry if I'm moving too fast anyway. I should check this stuff out. He hasn't heard the last 2 minutes. I think, does anyone else hear me? How about that? I hear something, so I think that I hear you, Victor. So maybe you've got something. Oh, yeah. I'm sure if you plug back in, it will work. Let's give it a second. You guys have sound? Cool. All right, let me just read through some of your comments really quickly. How do you get the job, clone handler? I don't know, but you probably have to be born into it and maybe speak French or something. Let's see here. Yep, double speak. Code switching also. So 12 and 14-year-olds are not adults. Well, I actually might disagree with you on that. I would say that adults are not adults really then, because adults are not any more mature maybe until they're 30 probably. So arguably 12 and 14 is when you want to prepare people for being adults, and that makes sense actually. Granted, they should still have protections, and that might be something else. So I'm going to show your comment. Obviously, I didn't mean to hide it. I choose to do that. This is real stuff. Yeah, I mean, we're down to talk about real stuff, obviously, and like I'm not saying the views and expressions held by the. I am saying, I guess, the views and expressions held by the guests on our show and the affiliates of Exertus do not necessarily represent the views of Exertus or the affiliates of Exertus, if that makes me safer. But it's important stuff that should be discussed and opened about, and like obviously, if there's nothing going on, then there shouldn't be anything wrong. But Conwan, good to hear from you, Gonzalez. Um, Sorry for calling you Wayan. I've heard that you shouldn't just randomly shout that at people, but I get excited because Chile is cool. I think we might have just lost our buddy, Victor. So I'm going to play a little bit more of that video, but I should probably finish this up because I've got some friends that are over here. So should be done with this really soon. So we talked a little bit about Flatland and that reality is a magic trick. And let me see here. This was the format window. And actually, I think if he's gone, then I'll just do this video without him. Sorry, guys. I think we can do this better together, but we'll do this on a separate video so that we save the content. So thanks very much, everybody. I think I'm going to call this one. Take care.